there, I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome or welcome back. Only true democracy and talk. Can't see me today because with 114-degree temperature, I refuse to wear makeup or do my hair, so I'm frightening looking right now. And I know some of you nasty people out there, especially those on the right who watch me on TV and listen to me, watch me here, love to be nasty about my appearance, even when I'm looking my best, would definitely have a lot to say. I don't have time for you. I'm irritated with the heat. Well, a lot of people are irritated with all the text messages they're getting, the mailers they're getting, the phone calls they're getting, because there's an election November 5th, did you know? And there's a debate tonight. And a lot of people are like, I just want the debate to be over. I just want this election to be over. They're tired of hearing about it. Well, sorry, because this is a big debate. It's a big deal. We're going to talk about it. We, or me, Leslie Marshall, with Brad Bannon, my buddy who runs Bannon Communications Research, a polling message development and media firm which helps labor unions, progressive issues groups, and Democratic candidates win public affairs and political campaigns. And you can hear Brad right here on my show because he has his own show called Deadline DC with Brad Bannon right here on my channel, on my network. You can hear Brad each Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern with that program, his program, Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. He also writes a great political column, which I always repost everywhere on all my social media sites called For the Hill. And you can read Brad's columns at muckrack.com/Brad-Bannon. That's muckrack.com, muckrack.com/Brad, B-R-A-D, Bannon, with a hyphen in between, B-A-N-N-O-N, no relation to Steve. His handle is at Deadline DC with Brad Bannon, and you can like him on Facebook and follow him on X there at Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Brad, so good to talk to you. You and I are hardly on at the same time or together, but I thought it was important that I bring you on tonight because you have so much knowledge about politics and these debates specifically. And it's there's just so much to talk about. First of all, a lot of people are saying, and I want to know if you agree or disagree with this, that this is a bigger mountain tonight for Vice President Harris because a lot of people don't know her. I mean, they know Trump more than her. Trump's been out there, not just now with press conferences and rallies. She's done rallies and a sit-down interview, but he's been president. And he's technically been campaigning since he lost the presidency in 2020. So is it, in a sense, not hers to lose, but hers to win tonight? Because a lot of people don't know her and are looking for strength. Is she up to the job? And, how she holds herself not only against Donald Trump, but how she answers the questions posed, because there are a lot of people out there who think without a teleprompter or notes, she can't talk, which is clearly not true. But is this Kamala Harris's, is it more of an uphill battle for her tonight? Is it a bigger deal? Is it a bigger win if she wins this tonight?
Yeah, it is a lot bigger deal for the vice president. You're right. If you look at the national polls, anywhere from 25 to 30% of the voters don't know very much about Kamala Harris. A lot of voters, all they know about him is that she's Joe Biden's vice president and she's the Democratic nominee for president. Other than that, a lot of voters just don't know anything or very much about her. And she has nature and like politics abhors a vacuum, and she has a chance to close the vacuum tonight. And the stakes are especially high because this may be the only nationally televised debate between Trump and Harris. Trump was very hesitant to do this debate, and it's unclear whether he'll agree to do another one. So this may be the vice president's only chance to, have an opportunity to reach the broad spectrum of American voters who don't know anything about her.
Okay, there's so many things I want to ask you, and I only have you for the second half of this, and we have commercial breaks, and so first of all, I mean, the polls are crazy. I mean, you see predictors like Nate Silver. I'm sorry, I wanted to I threw up in my mouth a little when I read 64% chance of Trump winning, and then you read Decision Desk, which has all the polls. Poly market, one day, I mean, it's all over the place. Would you say, and especially since 2016, we're a bit tainted, that the polls are not to be believed at this time? And I say that also because Steve Kamecki from MSNBC, he says that in some of these states, like Wisconsin, for example, that the Democratic numbers in the past have been higher than what they end up actually being. The Republican numbers, Trump's supporters, those numbers end up being higher after, the election. Are we seeing, do you think, a couple of things? One, are people that say they're undecided really undecided? And is there this faction of voters again that are uncomfortable saying they'll vote for Trump? I think we're way beyond that, aren't we?
Well, yeah. Now, I think my reading of the polls is I think this is a very close race. First of all, you can ignore the national polls because they're almost completely meaningless. If we elected a president by popular vote, the national polls would make some sense. But since we don't, they don't. The only way to get a handle on this campaign is to look at the polls in the battleground states. There are 7 of them, and they'll decide the outcome, with all apologies to Massachusetts, California, New York, Texas. It's going to be those 7 battleground states that pick the next president. And if you look at the polls in the battleground states, the race is very close.
No, yeah,
Uh,
when you talk about very close, let's take Florida. Have you ever seen a Democrat 2 to 3 percentage points behind the Republican in a state that's gone red, over the years and hasn't been a swing state for, decades, like Florida? Have you seen somebody coming this close?
No, it's a very good sign. And you could add basically the polls show that Harris is close to Trump in Texas. And right now, if I would, you can't really predict because a lot's going to happen in the next 7 weeks and it could go either way. And I think it's a mistake. I wouldn't call the election for Trump or Harris right now. I think it's too close. The first person I worked for in the political polling business was a Southerner. And if he was looking at this race between Harris and Trump, he would say it's as tight as a tick on a hound dog. And it is. Now, I think Harris has an advantage, which you cited before. And her advantage is her vote has more room to grow than Trump's does. Everybody pretty much has an opinion of Trump one way or the other. Now, as you talked about in your lead-in, a lot of voters, probably anywhere from a quarter to a third, don't know anything about Harris. And if she reaches those voters in a positive way, her vote has more potential to grow than
No,
Trump's.
that's right. Very, very true. To your point, in a recent New York Times Siena College poll, a voter said almost 30%, 28% needed to know more about her, but only 9%. I'm even surprised anybody needed to know more, about Trump. I think all of us know, who he is and what he is. Um, a lot of people are saying that Vice President Harris needs to deliver the policy message voters say they want to hear. What is that message? What policy message do voters say they want to hear? Because, I mean, our country's so divided. Do we have two people on the same page?
Well, I think she needs to address 2 issues. Well, first of all, I think her general theme, which she's been using, works. I think this is a battle between a promising future for America or going back to the bad old times. And within that, I think she needs to talk about 2 issues. One, she has to make a case. The biggest issue for voters is the economy. And many Americans are feeling squeezed financially because for up until the last couple of months, prices have accelerated higher and quicker than salaries have. And Americans feel they're caught in the crunch. So I think the biggest issue that Harris has to address is to talk about her plans to change economic policy to make life easier for hardworking middle class families.
Yeah,
I
because the economy is the stickier wicket, if you will. Her campaign has pretty much stayed close to what the Biden administration has been preaching. But at the same time, she's injected some populist freshness that's excited Democrats. It's also won over, and I think will win over skeptical, undecided voters. But her strategy thus far has been to speak in broad terms. And I don't think that the moderator, and certainly Donald Trump, are going to let her do that. We'll get your take from that, Brad, right after this quick break. Back in a moment with Brad Bannon. Back with you right after this. Check out his articles for The Hill at muckrack.com/Brad-Bannon. Follow him on X and like on Facebook at Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Brad Bannon, Bannon Communications Research President, joins us. We'll be back in a minute.
If you're about to purchase a new mower, chainsaw, generator, or other piece of outdoor power equipment, you need to know how to protect it. For instance, the gasoline you put in it. I'm Chris Kaiser, president of the Outdoor Power Equipment Institute. Most gas now contains 10% ethanol, and that's okay. But some gas pumps are changing. Higher ethanol gas blends, like E15, E30, and E85, may be available at a local station, and they may be cheaper. But it's harmful and illegal to use in outdoor power equipment. And what you put in your car may no longer be safe for other engines. When getting gas, look before you pump. Price is no longer the way to choose your fuel. You have to choose the right fuel, because not having the right fuel for the right product can damage or destroy the equipment. Look before you pump. Protect your equipment. Stick with E10 or less. A consumer can find out about which fuels are appropriate for outdoor power equipment use at lookbeforeyoupump.com.
And I can see it in your eyes, love.
We are back. I am Leslie Marshall. He is Brad Bannon. He runs Bannon Communications Research. He also, every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. on my network, my channel here, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, hosts his own program, Deadline DC with Brad Bannon, and he writes a political column each week for The Hill. You can read his column at muckrack.com/Brad-Bannon. His handle on X is at Brad Bannon, and on Facebook is at Deadline, on X, I'm sorry, I said that before. I had the wrong handle. I apologize. On X, follow him at Brad Bannon, BradBannon. On Facebook, like him at Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I had said one handle for both. My apologies. I'll tell you about that again. We're talking about the debate tonight. Brad, thank you for holding. Welcome back. So is it going to be difficult for her to deviate from her current strategy? Speaking in broad terms, not being very specific. She's going to be pushed by the debate moderator. She's going to be pushed by Trump when his mic is on, or it goes back to him, or even when the mic is on and, he's just talking about, God knows what, that, she needs to be specific. Two things here. One, she needs to be specific about the economy. And two, since I mentioned the mics, a lot of people are saying that she needs to push back because Biden didn't in the first debate, which was disastrous for Biden, obviously. She needs to push back on Trump. But when you're only given so much time, does she need to sort of split the difference there? Answer the question specifically and quickly, and then push back on any lies Trump has given because he lies so frequently.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would argue that the vice president has been pretty specific about her economic program. About a month ago, she called for an end to price gouging, especially at grocery stores. Just the other day, she revealed a plan to promote cheaper housing costs. So I think she's been very specific, and I think she'll talk about those things tonight. I think part of the question here is which Donald Trump shows up tonight. All week, his advisors have been telling him Try to be calm, Donald. Talk about the big two I's, inflation and immigration, and keep hammering home on those two issues. But Trump is not very well disciplined, as we know. And, is he going to be the calm, issue-oriented who attacks Harris on issues? Or is he the deranged, unhinged Donald Trump who's desperate and starts attacking her personally? Many Republicans are unhappy that he's focused so much on personal attacks against Harris and not focused on areas where the administration may be vulnerable, like inflation and immigration. So I think it's a question whether the calm or unhinged Donald Trump shows up tonight. And I'm betting that the unhinged Donald Trump shows up tonight, which makes Harris's job a lot easier.
Interesting that you say that because there's a lot of leakage from his campaign that people in his campaign are concerned about that, are concerned that he becomes bad boy Donald and not good boy Donald. And to your point, which Trump will we see on stage? He's 78, right? Just turned 78 when 2 weeks before he took the stage with Joe Biden in Georgia. Um, it, it, there's definitely a difference between Donald Trump in his first campaign and now, right? When he was asked
Yes.
last week at an economic forum if he would, quote, commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable, and if so, what specific piece of legislation he planned to champion, his response was, to put it nicely, rambling and incomprehensible at best. But he has for years spoken in this unwielding vernacular. He digresses. He thinks his talking and then circling back is brilliant. He thinks everything he does is brilliant, right? But there is a lot of word salad going on. There is some crazy talk, sharks and batteries, and the list goes on. But to your point, if he gets back into things that he has done in the past, for example, he's already accused Vice President Harris, who was a Howard University graduate, the daughter of a Jamaican man and an Indian woman, both immigrants, of deciding to, quote, turn black for political reasons. Because his allies love to say that she was a diversity hire. God forbid a woman or a minority, a woman who is a minority, got there with hard work. That riles up his base, but he already has their vote. How does that play in the suburbs where the vast majority of undecided voters live and are going to be watching from tonight?
Well, it doesn't play well in the suburbs at all. If you look at the suburbs in the battleground states, whether the Philadelphia suburbs or the Detroit suburbs or the Phoenix suburbs or the Atlanta suburbs, his attacks, especially against women, will backfire. Nikki Haley, who was Trump's opponent during the Republican primaries, just said the other day that his attacks, his misogynistic attacks on women by him and his running mate J.D. Vance have hurt him in among moderate Republicans, the kind of Republicans who voted for Nikki Haley during the primaries, and about a quarter of the Republicans in the primaries did vote for Nikki Haley. I have this theory about Trump. First of all, I think he's getting worse and worse in terms of being, non-comprehensible. I think basically 2 months ago or 3 months ago, he figured he was going to serve another term in the White House because Biden was so low in the water. And I think when Biden left the scene and Harris came to the scene, he started getting desperate because so much is on the line. He's likely to be in prison if he loses this election. Whereas if he doesn't, if he win, you know, if he wins, he's probably likely never to serve any prison time. But I think he's a desperate man, and I think his desperation is making him crazy, basically, and that's why he's been so erratic and non-compos mentis in the last couple of months.
Wow, interesting. I no, I hear you on that. Let's get back to some of the issues. An issue that is a winning issue for Kamala Harris. It helps her with women. It helps her with the younger voters, and that is the issue of abortion, reproductive rights. Donald Trump, we know, lies. We know that he talks out of both sides of his mouth constantly, and then goes back and talks about, from the other side again. He's boasted of appointing 3 of the 6 Supreme Court justices who voted in 2022 to gut Roe v. Wade, ending federal protections for abortions. He even says, quote, he's proclaimed at least once, I'm proud to have done it, at least once. And since then, most Republican-controlled states have imposed either bans or restrictive new laws on the procedure. Some of those efforts were beaten back or overturned by ballot measures organized by abortion rights activists. But we've seen in 3 out of 4 states, and now Florida, going to become the 4th, it would seem, depending on how this election comes up, this ballot measure comes up, that when you look at the polling, this decision was extremely unpopular. I mean, even people who consider themselves pro-life are pro-choice, somebody else's choice, or even to have their own choice. Now, he was out of the White House when the high court decision came down. He didn't personally feel the backlash. His party certainly did. The 2022 midterms, also we saw what happened in Ohio. So Vice President Harris is a former prosecutor. Do you think she will, and does she need to, really push him on that position?
Well, yes, I think she will, and she needs to. I think one thing you'll hear tonight from the vice president is there is a ballot measure right now in Florida. The state law limits abortions or eliminates them after 6 weeks of pregnancy. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump said he would vote for the ballot measure to erase those restrictions. And then 2 days later, he said he would vote to keep the restrictions. So I'm sure the vice president's going to point that out tonight. And basically Americans are pro-choice by about a 2-to-1 margin. The problem is Trump's base are vehemently anti-abortion, and basically his problem is he can't satisfy his base
You can't say, yeah,
at the same time.
right. You can't say get rid of Roe v. Wade, give it to the states, and you know that the House is going to put a federal abortion ban on your desk. Say that you won't sign it, but we know he lies. The list goes on. Brad, thank you for being with us. Brad Bannon runs Bannon Communications Research. Like I said, every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, host of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon right here. Also writes a political column each week for The Hill. Read it at muckrack.com/Brad-Bannon. Follow him on X at Brad Bannon, and like him on Facebook at Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. We'll be talking with Brad again, I'm sure, after the debate. I hope everybody will be watching. I know they're having debate watching parties. I'll be watching and providing Fox News analysis on radio and television. I'm Leslie Marshall. Marky Mark Maldi is our executive producer. Thank you for being